Good evening and welcome back to C's Listening Room. One thing I'm not good at is making introductions. So why don't we just skip through all that and go right into this. I'm going to throw you a bit of a curveball today. Usually I discuss rock music. It may be some pop music, alternative rock, hard rock. I'm usually within the sphere of rock and roll. And that's typically where I'm most comfortable listening and commenting on things. So I'm going to go outside of that globe today. We're going to discuss Saudade. This is Stephen Bishop. I'll hold this up a little bit longer. And Stephen Bishop is a singer-songwriter. Hasn't really been active lately. He's really big in the 70s. Did a lot pretty successful stuff in the 80s, and then he just kind of went away. And I don't know if he's retired or if his music just isn't being heard, but you've probably heard a couple of his songs if you're my age. If you're like in your 40s or older, and you spent any amount of time in a pharmacy or a grocery store or a dentist's office. It wasn't even pop music. It was like middle of the road, almost easy listening. It was easy listening. Not almost. It was easy listening. He had really good stuff. But nobody listens to that stuff anymore. It's not popular. You don't hear it on any radio stations because it doesn't fit the format. But he is a pretty successful songwriter for whatever period of time that music was popular. And he released this album in 2007 directly through Target. I was in Target one day and I happened to see the CD, and he had a song called On and On. It's a beautiful song. I love the song. I really do. I love the original version. And I was just kind of looking at the CD rack, and this had to be around 2007. I saw the CD and I noticed that song was on there. And I thought this was going to be the original version, and it's a remake. I love the original version of the song. But I bought the album, and what this actually is his 2007 release that was only available through Target. Now, first off, remember I said people don't really listen to this kind of music anymore. Most of his fans are probably over 60 now. People younger than that probably just never got into his music. And there's really no place to hear it anymore unless like somebody tells you about him and you go out of your way to seek it out. So somebody that's been pretty inactive and hasn't had a major hit, selling their music strictly through Target, to me is kind of limiting. You're not really going to get a lot of buyers for it. You're not really going to get people going into Target looking specifically for an artist that had been largely forgotten at that point. So I think the marketing idea on that was a little iffy, but that's what he did. It was strictly through Target, and I guess with what I've heard, about 6 of these are new tracks. The other 6 are previously recorded. But what he did here was he basically stripped everything down. He's got, what's this guy's name? Oscar Castroneves. I have never heard of this guy. I'm going to go look him up. I am going to, when I'm done making this, Google him and see what I can find on him. He's a acoustic jazz guitarist, and this guy's good. And then there's an upright bass. There's some very soft drumming on here, but it's basically light Latin jazz. It's basically a bossa nova album. He is a pop singer, and he primarily got his his hits through the pop realm, but this is a jazz album. And this is not something I would normally listen to. This is not something I would normally like. This is the kind of music that I could see my father listening to like 30 years ago when his wine tasting buddies would come over. And they would bring this highbrow music with them, usually classical, but sometimes they would bring some very eclectic jazz. And they'd put the CD on and pass a bottle of Zinfandel or Sauvignon Blanc around, stare at the label for about 10 minutes, and then pop the cork, sniff the bottle, swirl it around in the glass, and just discuss this wine stuff with all these French words, and this music would be on in the video. It's good wine tasting music. Or it's the kind of music that we would hear in these eclectic restaurants where my parents would drag my brother and me to go after church. We'd wake up on Sunday and mom and dad said, get ready, hurry up. Do your hair, brush your teeth, we're going to church. And we just wanted to play Nintendo or ride our bikes around the cul-de-sac. And we'd go off to church, and then afterwards, like, oh, cool, now we get to go home and see if we can jump Super Mario over the flagpole. Nope. Oh, mom and dad say, oh, we're going into town and we're gonna eat out. We're gonna eat some brunch. And mom and dad would be having these adult conversations. My brother and I would just be kicking each other under the table, calling each other names, being disruptive, and mom and dad would be in this eternal state of irritation, just annoyed constantly at us because we're being disruptive, we're being immature, because we're just acting out on our youthful boredom. This is the kind of music that they would have played in those restaurants. I don't drink wine. I still don't go to these restaurants. And I still don't typically listen to the kind of music that these far more refined and upscale environments and activities would usually be heard at. But I bought the album. Again, this is for a much more elegant environment than I would typically find myself at. And I bought it because of a song that was basically remade. I'm gonna turn my rock card in, I guess, by saying this, but I'm impressed. This is a good album. I rarely listen to it, but it's actually a really good album because he basically gets rid of all of the orchestrations and all these other distractions that his music had back in his popular days, and you can actually hear his songwriting. The focus now is not on a beautiful song, which, like, On and On is one of the most beautiful songs I've ever heard, but it doesn't have all the really pretty and really cool instrumentation going on in the background that distracts you. This is basically just the acoustic Latin guitar, like an upright bass on the drums. There's a little bit of a steel guitar beat in one of the songs. And I think I'm trying to think, there was something else that I remember hearing that like really stood out. But maybe it might have been a keyboard. But I mean, it is down to the absolute basics. It's quiet, it's a sparse arrangement, and you can actually focus on the lyrics and the songwriting. And it really makes you appreciate this guy who goes by the name Bish. It's Stephen Bishop, but he goes by Bish. It really makes you appreciate Bish. I don't think I would have appreciated his songwriting if I had not heard these songs, especially in this context. But for 2007, he was pretty inactive. His music, he wasn't really releasing a lot of new music. He could still sing. His vocals are still really good. So that's great to hear. All the nice stuff that makes his music sound beautiful, it's all removed, and you can really hear that he is a great singer. You can focus more on the songwriting. It made me really appreciate him. There's actually a couple good guest stars on here for think it might have been track 4. It's not in English, so I'm not even going to try to pronounce the name, but they have Earl Klugh playing the guitar in that one. Earl Klugh is basically the Weather Channel guy. He's the guy whose music you used to hear when the Weather Channel first came out. We had the Weather Channel, we had cable back in the early 90s, and my dad would watch it. And it would have like this Doppler radar, and it would tell you what the wind speeds were in Des Moines, Iowa, and what time the sun was going to come up in Denver, Colorado, stuff like that. I thought it was boring, but there was always this really crisp, clean-sounding, really bright and vibrant contemporary acoustic guitar music in the background. Very modern, very, very, very clean sounding, really well recorded. That was Earl Klugh. They managed to get Earl Klugh to do lead guitar on this, on that one song. And then on, I believe it's song 5, it's a guy named Eric Clapton. You might have heard of him, playing the steel guitar solo. So they were able to get some really top-notch guest musicians, and they aren't even the stars of the show. They just kind of agreed to play solos or some guitar leads on here. Took a very, very soft background role. Nothing real, look at me. Just, I guess, out of respect. That tells you the caliber of musician that this guy is. It's kind of a shame that more people aren't aware of him. And then he's got a track here, New York in the 50s. I'm not a fan of New York. I'm not into that lifestyle. I am not. I think I would be miserable paying $2,000 a month for a one-room apartment in a cramped building overlooking a very, very busy street where 300 people a day are walking, taxi cab horns honking, bicyclists trying to run people over, just so I could live near some very modern or very sophisticated restaurants. And, having to go underground to ride on a subway and not own a car and all that, that's too fast-paced, it's too chaotic. It's not my lifestyle at all. That being said, it's a provocative song. I mean, he sings about being this jazz musician and a poet, and mentions the girl at Vassar and going to the Guggenheim. None of that stuff interests me. If I had a time machine, I would not go back to New York in the 50s. It's not me. But it's one of those songs where you think about it and you brainstorm, what would you like to witness? Where would you like to be? Now, Stephen Bishop is a Californian. I looked it up. He was actually born in San Diego, which is actually one of my favorite cities. I've been there. No, I don't think there's any other place in America like I love San Diego. Too expensive, but man, it is a great place. He's from there. Moved to LA. And I like watching the old TV shows like Hunter, the detective show from the 80s and 90s, because one of the things is you get to see Los Angeles in the late 80s, early 90s. I think Rockford Files, I think that took place in LA. And I really like seeing the old images of old-time Los Angeles. So he actually lived there, but he was singing about being in New York. Now, see, with me, I would love to hear somebody like him write a similar song about Los Angeles or San Diego in the 70s, 60s, even the 50s. I think Nashville, Tennessee, back in the 60s and 70s, and the early days of the Hank Williams days, 1950s, 1960s, I think that would have been a cool place. Anything like that. I mean, Miami. 1950s Miami would have been cool. So maybe I'll go and write a song about that, influenced by that, just because the particular place and time in that song is not particularly my liking. Doesn't mean that I can't enjoy the song, because he's a great songwriter. And when you hear the music in such a laid-back manner, you can really soak in the lyrics, and you can really relate to what he's saying. So I can just hear him singing about him dreaming about or imagining New York in the 50s, and I can think, well, what would I like to have seen? Where would I like to go back in time and witness? And that to me is one sign of a brilliant songwriter, when they can make you think that deep and challenge yourself like that. I also like the fact that quite a few of these songs started out as pop songs, and now they're this like dimly lit upscale restaurant bossa nova style, because these songs are so good that they can so easily translate from one genre to another, like seamlessly. So that gives me more respect for him as an artist as well, hearing him take this music that was not, that in some cases at least, as I said, about half the album contains previously recorded music. But to hear him be able to take these pop songs that he wrote and reimagine them so easily into a jazz style, that means these are good songs. These songs can stand on their own. I don't know how common this CD is to find. As I said, it was only available through Target, and he was not a popular artist at that point. His fame and his success had really kind of been left behind at that point. So this is much later than, this is much past his heyday. And I just don't think a lot of people were looking for his CD. And the people that were looking for another Stephen Bishop album probably were not just looking at the CD rack at Target. So I just don't think this really reached a very large audience. It's not, as I said, it's a jazz album. It's wine tasting music. It's lights out, turn the candles on while you're inviting your date over for a dinner at your house. Probably it's a bit more sophisticated than my simple life. Not music that I normally listen to, but I had it on. I listened to it when I first bought it, kind of forgot about it. I found it the other day, and I listened to it for about 2 days in the car going to and from work. Had it on in the CD player, and just to get a refreshing view of it. And it's brilliant. This is a great album. It's not rock and roll. It's not a genre I'm really familiar with. It's not something I really have a lot of use for. But as a product, as a musical product, it's good. There's not a lot of variety in the music. It's pretty much it's just that Latin guitar, a little bit of soft drumming, upright bass, and that's about it. But it's not about musical variety. It's about the emotion, the mood, the romantic mood coming through. It's about the lyrics. This is not about making a surprising, unpredictable album full of unique songs. It's about what he's saying and what he's trying to get out, and it's very successful at it. I mean, he writes here on the back, shimmering with entrancing melodies and swaying rhythms, Saudade takes listeners to a private resort of the soul. Saudade means to have an earnest, heartfelt longing, especially for something beyond reach, Bishop explains in the album's title. He actually accomplished that. As I said, this is date music. If you've got, if you're going to be turning the lights off, putting some candles on the table, and popping open some wine, some Chardonnay for your date, this is the song to put on your CD player. If you're going to be having if you're having some of your friends over for a wine tasting, or you're going to have a mature party, not the house party where you're trashing the house, but you're going to have very mature people coming over. You're going to be discussing literature or live theater. This is a very swanky, elegant, ritzy, high-class album to put on for those mature moments. Very romantic, very upscale. It's about the mood. It's not about pushing boundaries to say, hey, let's see how many new cool ideas I can come up with. It's very traditional, it's very classic, but it's not about innovation. It's about what it conveys, and it succeeds. I don't think there's a major flaw with this album. I'm surprised at how much I like it. And yeah, I'll turn my rock card in by doing this, but I'm going to give this one 4 out of 5. I might be getting close to giving it a 4.5 out of 5. This is, for what it is, objectively, this is a brilliant, strong recording. Look for it. Go on YouTube and see if somebody uploaded it. This is a very well-made album with a great track selection, great backing musicians. Definitely a less is more approach. Stripped it down, made it nice and soft, nice and sparse, just what was necessary. Very well done. I might actually now be after listening to this again, after listening to it for a second time, more closely recently, I might be a bossa nova jazz fan now. This album might have converted me. Sorry, but easy 4 out of 5. So that's my album recommendation for you guys. Stephen Bishop, Saudade. Look this one up. Saudade. Try to find this one. Not rock. Very good. Maybe it's just because I'm getting old. Anyway, have a good rest of your weekend. I'll catch you later.